Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Heather Iliff, President and CEO of Maryland Nonprofits, and I'm delighted to welcome you to This is the Moment to Care, beginning the conversation around heart-filled, caring organizations. Next slide, please. So we wouldn't want to start any major event at Maryland Nonprofits without acknowledging our phenomenal board of directors. This 16-member team is bringing it like nobody's business. They are so engaged, putting their shoulder into the wheel, leading our equity agenda, keeping quality of life and equity as our North Star as they lead us through strategic planning, our 30th anniversary year, and reaccrediting ourselves with the standards for excellence. This is a board with a full plate and a full heart for this work, and I thank you so much. Next slide, please. And our staff team, I can't even speak to how phenomenal this group of people has been. Talk about creating a culture that cares. You know, any staff team, especially in the past 3 years of crisis, is going to be seeing each other through family ups and downs, illnesses, celebrations, a new life. And this team shows up for each other every day in such meaningful ways. And I would like to give a special shout out to Susana Hernandez Martin, who is celebrating her birthday today. Happy birthday, Susana. And Susana has played a huge role in the development of this campaign, and we're so pleased to celebrate your birth on this planet. Next slide, please. Maryland Nonprofits' mission is to strengthen organizations and networks for greater quality of life and equity. And on this slide, there's a wheel to the left that says stronger organizations lead to stronger networks that lead to greater power and resources. And at the center of the circle, there's quality of life and equity as the heart of the matter. And so we see this as a virtuous circle where we continue to build, to connect, to be there for each other, to change the world out there. And today is about changing the world inside our jobs that we do every day. Next slide, please. At the beginning of this year, I published a blog inaugurating a year of grace, and I'm putting that into the chat. Oh, I think I sent it to the waiting room participants. Let me send that to everyone. And I don't know if any of you really felt, I think many people really felt this year beginning with that surge in Omicron, where literally everyone knew someone, everyone had a family member who got COVID, who faced the pandemic in a new way. And we as nonprofits were looking at a third year of serious crisis. And it just thought that we need to show each other grace. We need to show ourselves grace. We need to understand that, as Carmen Marshall, director of our consulting practice, says, not everyone is having the same experience. And this pandemic has been much more difficult for people of color, for families who have someone with a disability, and many other people faced much tougher pandemics than others. And so really being there for each other and being there for ourselves and showing grace every day is how we get through this together. And just click the dot for an animation here that says, I apologize for the delay in getting back to you. How many of us have started how many days and how many emails with this phrase? And we just need to continue to put one step in front of the other, do what we can, but understand there's never going to be a moment when we're ever finished. We're never going to feel done. And so we just need to feel proud of ourselves for what we accomplish every day, who we care for every day, including caring for ourselves. Next slide, please. I want to give a huge thanks to the Golden Group. They are our CFO, and they provide CFO services to many of our members who just really have been accelerated by having, regular, high quality, on-time financial information and clean audits as we have had for the last 8 years. No management letter with the work of the Golden Group, and also Vince Connolly of Connolly and Associates Fundraising, who will be chairing our 30th anniversary committee, and just got so excited about the theme when we first told it to him. Some people call Vince the mayor of Baltimore. I think he knows everyone in town, and he's branching out statewide with services called Just Posting for just $1,000. He will post your development job openings with his powerful network. So thank you so much, Golden Group and Vince Connolly. And today we're going to celebrate, this is the moment to care, and creating a culture of care through thought-provoking, lifelong work of several of our speakers, through poetry and through song. And this is all going to be about the change that we can make ourselves. And before we turn it over to this amazing team, I wanted to talk about some of the change that we're making out there, because in order to create a culture of care, we need to both look internally and also look systemically at what is making us feel like we're on this hamster wheel and can never get out of scarcity mode. So we are advocating for higher salaries, especially for direct care staff. And next slide, please. And let me just say what was on that previous slide. So that was a picture of a healthcare worker and an opinion piece that the frontline workers who got us through the pandemic deserve relief. And that was an opinion piece we did in Maryland Matters. And shortly thereafter, next slide, we did a press conference in December, bringing together, if we could put up the next slide, please, bringing together nonprofits, more than 300 signatories to our call for investing $1 billion into our people first agenda in the legislature. And we were successful in getting $635 million into the governor's budget through executive branch advocacy and additional advocacy that has taken the entire policy council of advocacy leaders across the state, has gotten that additional $370 million. So we are proud to say that the budget that is going for a vote in the General Assembly includes $1 billion for nonprofit provider rates, for the victims of domestic violence, for so many important putting people first priorities. There's still more to be done. We didn't get our $100 million grant program for general operating support. So we'll be working on that for next legislative session. But thank you all to everyone who signed on to that campaign, and our phenomenal advocacy team who helped make that happen. Next slide, please. So next, I would like to turn over the agenda to the amazing Wendy Wolf. And when Wendy came full-time on our team and was leading our consulting practice, and I asked her, what will distinguish Maryland Nonprofits Consulting Group from anyone else? What's the difference that you plan to make as a leader of this practice? And just the first thing she said was, I'm going to bring the heart into the work. I'm going to show people that we care. We're going to care for our clients and help them care for the people they serve. And today is about how she is leading this This is the Moment to Care campaign towards creating internal cultures that care in nonprofit organizations. I'm sorry, Wendy, I made you cry already. I was crying all morning. And if you're a crier, get your tissues out, because we're going to have some song before we leave, and it's going to be tears of joy. I promise you, you will be moved. And thank you so much, Wendy Wolf.
Thank you. Thank you, Heather. And thank you everyone for coming. And I just got to get myself together, because I've been crying since the music started, because Janice Foreman told me to put Ain't No Stopping Us Now on, and I didn't realize it made me so teary. I remember myself in 7th grade with roller skates on, listening to that. Anyway, I just want to say an absolute heartfelt thank you to these two ladies who probably don't want to be on the screen right now, but these are the marketing geniuses who took Heather's vision of this is the moment to care and having this organizational caring initiative and put it into artwork. So not enough can be said about their creativity and their driving of this initiative. And I just want to also thank you for being here and for allowing me to do this work. This is a lifetime of work that I have been doing, and I am so grateful to all of my clients who have helped me become better at what I do, and to my team, to the Maryland Nonprofits family, because we do this work every day and we look at our uglies and we look at our great things and we try to move past. So I'm just grateful to be here. And thank you, Heather, for having the vision and allowing me to do this work. And thank you for coming. So here we are today, and we all have this burnout badge. We have this nonprofit burnout badge. We've been wearing it for so long. Well, guess what? Today, it officially expires. We are going to work together to co-create an experience where we are no longer having teams of people who are exhausted and burned out doing some of the most important work there is in this world. So good news, this badge expires today. Never fear, our marketing team made you a new one that you can download, so we'll share that with you later, but we're not doing it anymore, and we hope you'll join us. So why now? Why now should we start caring? We've been doing this work and operating like this for long. I've been in this field for 30 years, so easily at least 30 years. And so the question is, why now? Well, here we are at the greatest opportunity to be alive. The pandemic forced us to go home, turn inward, and then we got an incredible opportunity in this world to acknowledge and change the inequities that have plagued Black and Brown communities. We have extremely heavy work to do to continue to right these wrongs and to honor communities that have been held down and squashed, pillaged, and rampaged by the system. So, and then on top of that, we have this mental health crisis that we've always had, that we continue to have, that we don't speak about, that hopefully between all of these things, we are going to wake up and do right by each other. And the great news is that we have this whole group of millennials who are saying to us, the social contracts that you created don't exist, and that we're here for a more richer, more lively, more joyful experience. So we're going to work on this together. And I'm just so grateful to be alive at this moment in time. So COVID showed us, let me just change the slide, that our health depends on each other, that in fact, we are interconnected. And it also told us that each of us deeply, deeply matters. The frontline workers, the helpers, the moms and dads and grandmas and grandpas who were working and taught their kids at home. I mean, all the things we do really showed us that we have to care for each other, that we are interconnected, and that we are indeed doing this great work of the world. So, and thank the good heavens that we're doing it. So the Great Resignation taught us that many of us are still without staff in crucial positions, and people are also continuing to still have a hard time finding good paying, solid jobs. So we have this massive Great Resignation, but we also have this problem where people are having difficulty finding great paying jobs. In addition, we have this great awakening that I just mentioned a few moments ago that is showing us finally allowing, I don't even know how to say it with grace, allowing us to be a new way with each other and to really stop this violence and hatred of some communities. So that's exciting. And now we're talking about, in the context of today, the Great Reset, right? And this is our chance to act. This is our chance to stand up in the name of love and caring, to work together for the caring, for equity, for honor and inclusion of all in the workplace. So with that said, and I can't see, I hope he's here because I don't see him right now. I can only see a few people. Great. Thank you, Amy.
I'm here.
Hi. And I see Amy told me because I can see her. Well, we're so glad you're here. I don't even know what to say about this man. We're new friends. He is a son, a husband, a lifelong servant leader, a poet, a writer, a consultant. He is a self-proclaimed nonprofit nerd and just one of the most thoughtful, forward-thinking, beautiful humans I've ever encountered. So with that having said, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and Naya is going to help us understand a few really critical issues that impact and provide reason to have burnout. Thanks, Naya.
Thank you for that very generous introduction, Wendy. I very much appreciate it. And the sentiment is shared. Wendy, I just want to say thank you for your support as a team member, as a colleague heading into today. Thank you for your shared vision with Heather and team in building this conversation, making space for us to talk about a caring culture and how courageous we have to be in order to really build a caring society when, we do have a legacy of uncaring actions that is kind of mixed up in our culture and mixed up in our way of life. I always get nervous before public speaking, no matter how many times I do it. And Wendy, your encouragement, your partnership has just been a great encouragement for me. So I'm going to share my screen because I got to have some accompanying slides. And, we're going to talk about culture today. Some of you may be familiar with Peter Drucker's quote, culture eats strategy for breakfast. I've had many titles in my life. I've worked in many organizations in 3 very different states, born and raised in South Dakota. My first job was when I was 9 years old, shining shoes for 25 cents a shoe at a tanning salon and wedding parlor. I served as an AmeriCorps Vista member, taking a poverty vow to serve the community of Baltimore City. It's what brought me from South Dakota to Baltimore. And I have served as a deputy director, supporting the operations and overseeing a staff of 24 coordinators and 350 after-school coaches. This statement that culture eats strategy for breakfast has been true in every organization that I have served. It does not matter how brilliant your strategies are. It doesn't matter how brilliant your standards are. If your culture is toxic, your strategy will suffer and your standards will fail. And because the modern world of work is hierarchical, organizational leaders have an incredibly tough job. Every employee has got to care about each other, and that includes their leaders. Leaders do have a unique superpower. They have the authority and the influence to regulate the climate of an organization's culture. And just to draw that further, CEOs, I love the title CEO because I think it really makes clear how much influence and authority an organizational leader has. They need to create that beloved community because they are seen as the cultural chief. They need to ensure the effectiveness of the organization because they are the business executive. And everybody looks to the CEO in order to provide job security because they do have the right to hire and fire. So the decisions and how we make decisions in an organization and the culture around those decisions really does influence the entire well-being of that organization's life. I would amend Peter Drucker's quote slightly. How we work, how we finance, who we secure, these decisions are typically governed by our executives, our boards, and fiscal calendars. And while culture does eat strategy for breakfast, governance grows the goods. Culture in and of itself is not sufficient for making the work. Just as farmers feed communities by organizing when we plant the seeds and organizing when we harvest the crops, nonprofits, funders, and officials govern the distribution of care. We have to have rules, we have to have orders, we have to have decisions, and we have to cooperate towards a common end. Yet the struggle is real. The burnout we all feel is real. Because while we aspire to have a good culture, while we aspire to have good governance and grow good organizations, there's something in the groundwater that has made this great resignation possible. Some of you all might be familiar with the Racial Equity Institute's groundwater metaphor. If you're not familiar with it, Google the groundwater approach. I absolutely love this metaphor. And it goes a little something like this. When we're thinking about all of the inequities of society, I want you to imagine you're walking by a lake and you see a single fish belly up in the water, dead. You might wonder to yourself, what's going on with that single fish? What happened to it? Did it eat something bad? Did it die of old age? What happened to that individual fish? If you were to go by that same lake and you were to see half of the fish belly up in the lake, you would ask yourself, what's going on in that lake? Is there something happening with that species of fish? You wouldn't look at the individual anymore. You look at the community. You look at that immediate area. Now, imagine you were to walk across an entire region, see many lakes, and each lake had the same phenomena. Half of the fish belly up. You couldn't ask yourself what's going on with that fish. You couldn't ask yourself what's going on with that group of fish. You have to wonder to yourself, what's in the groundwater that's causing all of these fish to die, to suffer for this? What is poisoning these waters? This groundwater metaphor draws clear that these structural inequities that we're seeing in society are so pervasive that it's larger than any single one of us. It's larger than any single organization. There's something in the culture. There's something in the groundwater that is causing us all to feel these high degrees of burnout. If one of us were feeling burnout and unfulfilled, then it might be a me problem. But when 1/3 or more of us are feeling distressed and pessimistic or unfulfilled, then we have to ask a different kind of question. And we have to be critical in our analysis of our situation, our shared circumstances. Because the reality is that culture and our way of life becomes invisible to us. The longer we're in an environment, the more normalized things become. So when we're having this conversation about how to create a caring culture, we need to make the invisible visible. So today, I'd like to introduce you to a couple of reports. Maybe you've already seen this report. Maybe you've already come across this book. We're going to have a side-by-side review of the Culture 500 report and the characteristics of white supremacy culture. Because to continue building a sustaining culture of care, we have to have these courageous conversations about those practices and those perspectives that are holding us back, and those practices and perspectives that are moving us forward. So to aid us today, I'd like to reference these two reports, and I'd like to acknowledge out front that the phrase white supremacy culture might have triggered some of you who are listening. If you are triggered, I assure you, I care about you, and I made this next slide because I care about you. Trust me, I do not intend to tell you about yourself, because there are cultural traits that are listed in these characteristics of white supremacy culture that I'll introduce in a little bit, that I embody, that we all embody, that Black, brown, and white-led organizations embody. Because again, this is bigger than any one of us. This is bigger than any one individual group. We all as Americans have inherited a culture. There is something in our groundwater. So I'd like to ask each of you a question. When you're thinking about American business culture, let's take a minute to hear from each other. If you feel able to share, what words do you associate with American business culture? Feel free to share positive, negative, or neutral language in the chat. I see greed. I see competitive. I see profit, competitive. I see drive. I love that word. Absolutely. And that drive is definitely a part of the ambitious American dream. I see insensitive. I see fear. I see productivity. I see theft. I see grind. Yes, the American hustle is real, right? Like that hustle culture, that building bigger, that making better, that innovating always, that is all a part of the culture of how we work. And even though work is just one part of our life, if we're always competitive and always driving and always innovating and driven by profit and driven by greed and driven by the unkindness because of that competitiveness, you know, it's going to take a toll on us. It's going to take a toll on our hearts, our spirits, our minds. It might make us feel sick. And so for us to heal and nurture the best of our innovation, nurture the best of our ambition, and nurture the best of our drive, we have to create a practice for embodying those virtues. Because as we said, this doesn't happen by magic. There's something structural we all inherited. I want to give a little bit of a history of leadership and management. George Washington is a part of our shared inheritance. A study of industrial farming posted on the Mount Vernon website found that, and I quote, by increasing the scope of supervision to closely track the amount of time spent on each type of work, the number of days lost to illness, the amount of corn used by each of his 5 farms, and other minute observations and calculations, Washington was becoming more like a modern industrialist or efficiency expert than a traditional gentleman farmer. Washington was also increasing the burden on the enslaved workers. This included adopting new, innovative ways of farming. Because America is built on a foundation of extractive labor, we are today trying to sustain a culture of mass production and mass consumption. That is what the industrial society has built globally. And although slavery ended a long time ago, the methods of production has remained. And tightening the control of wages began, and the focus became on advancing the interests of the employer as the greatest good. According to Frederick Winslow Taylor, the father of scientific management, the worker only had physical and economic needs. Personal motivation, psychological or emotional needs did not matter or did not exist in the workplace because, and I quote, "It is only through enforced standardization of methods, enforced adoption of the best implements and working conditions, and enforced cooperation that this faster work can be assured. And the duty of enforcing the adoption of standards and the enforcing of this cooperation rests with management alone." There's a deep concentration of control in management and a forcing of standard operating procedures that, you know, persist and is not an inherently bad thing, but it was very focused on how to advance the employer's interests. This interesting thing happened in 1954. The Revenue Act of 1954 established the modern tax code, including the 501c status. And we then see, you know, less of a focus on profit and more of a focus on leadership development start to be introduced into the culture of American enterprise. So around the same time, we get leaders like Peter Drucker, who quoted, you know, culture eats strategy for breakfast. He also said things like, so much of what we call management consists in making it difficult for people to work. He's introduced this notion that management does create some necessary and unnecessary barriers that we have to focus around. And today we are operating within this notion of a learning organization, thanks to thinkers like Peter Sang. Peter Sang, you know, introduced this notion of shared vision and mastery and systems thinking that is very much behind the drive theory, where, you know, workers want mastery, autonomy, and purpose. And while we're in this in-between place where we continue to find ourselves progressing, we also are seeing, you know, how slow and difficult change can be, because we do have this inheritance. We do have this history of a factory model for work and education that is still changing and still with us today. And it is slow and difficult process because, as Mark Twain said, we all are for progress, but it's the change that we don't like. However, we are committed to change, and we must change. And why do we need to focus on culture and governance as a part of that change? As a sector, a toxic corporate culture is by far the strongest predictor of industry-adjusted attrition and is 10 times more important than compensation in predicting turnover, according to the Culture 500 report. For employees, your boss in your workplace has a bigger impact on your physical and mental health than your doctor. And for employers, when considering the cost to manage attrition, recruitment, healthcare, and reputation, a toxic culture can lead to an up to 20% reduction in productivity. So these are things that we need to consider. Like, how are we detoxifying the workplace so that we can get the most out of our people? How are we detoxifying the workplace so that we can maximize our health benefits and secure the health of our people? I want us to look at the Culture 500 report, and what they found is making up are some of the behaviors that can be seen in a toxic culture environment. So Culture X in this past January released a report where they conducted a rigorous large-scale research looking at 1.4 million Glassdoor reviews. They analyzed it using natural language processing in order to see what were the reasons that people were pointing to were the reason that they left their job, causing turnover. Then I also want us to look at the characteristics of American business culture. This was published in 2001, before natural language processing and Glassdoor had millions of reviews to review. This was made by a collaboration of community organizers who were trying to identify how organizations are unconsciously creating norms and standards that make it difficult for employees to participate fully in their workplace. In the Culture 500 report, this father and son duo, they identified 5 traits of a toxic workplace. After they looked at the reasons that people were leaving their jobs, they found that a toxic culture was the #1 reason, and they drilled down into that further. They discovered that the #1 reason that people felt a workplace was toxic was because it was non-inclusive. And that means what you might infer it means. It means that people were experiencing discrimination. People were experiencing prejudice. They found that the other traits were they felt their colleagues or their supervisors, their superiors were disrespectful, that decisions were unethical, that there was a cutthroat and undermining environment. And in the worst cases, there were abusive bosses. Now, I'm going to go out on a limb and suggest that you probably aren't swimming in the most toxic environment. I'm going to go out on a limb and suggest that you are actually in a more safe environment. You're probably working on inclusion. You're probably respectful. You're probably ethical. You're probably collaborative, and you're probably caring. We all are existing on a spectrum of these different traits, and we just have to be self-aware and collectively aware about where we're making gains and where we're falling behind. And Wendy, I see the time. I know I am over. I will.
10 more minutes. You're good. You're good. It's so brilliant. My gosh, keep going.
So, you rather than describing the extreme state of a toxic culture, as the Culture 500 report does posit, these characteristics of an American business culture distill 14 mindsets that are creating damaging environments. If you're feeling brave and able, I'm curious in the chat, please share which of these 14 traits you recognize in yourself. And I'll lead by example. When I think of the areas where I still need to grow, I recognize that as a writer, I worship the written word. I believe that policy and data should be how we decide most things. And that can turn That can turn people's experiences down and turn precedent up. I definitely have strong opinions. I can be one of those people who think there's only one right way, and it might be my way. Just like many males out there, I can get pretty defensive. My tone goes up before when I get angry, or when I get mad, or I get frustrated because people think that I'm wrong. And those all can shut down group dynamics. I see people saying and acknowledging that they're working on perfectionism and urgency. They're working on that fear of open conflict. Absolutely. Many of us are conflict avoiders because it's very uncomfortable. So there are these characteristics that we all can embody, and these characteristics become more likely to be pronounced in our work because of the structure in which we must operate. Now, they go on to recommend antidotes. They say that there are actionable ways that we can improve these characteristics. If you are leaning towards perfectionism, maybe you need to stop blaming yourself or others and start appreciating. If you're struggling with a sense of urgency, maybe you need to stop pressuring yourself and others and start supporting. If you're defensive, maybe stop domineering. Like I'm domineering these 22 minutes right now, and start humbling. So I'm curious to know from you, what in the chat, I'm curious to learn, what positive traits do you see yourself bring to your workplace? What positive traits do you see yourself bringing to your workplace, actively or working on improving? I see people bringing empathy. I see people inviting complexity. People sharing, bringing patience. Absolutely. I'm a big believer in the crowd-in philosophy. Yes, there's overwork. Yes, there's oversimplifying. Yes, there's silencing, but there's so much good that people are crowding in. Let's optimize those and work a little bit more on those areas where we're weak. And the Culture 500 report, they also offered some governing changes that organization leaders can make. So while we're all working on our self-awareness and our self-work, there are some governing changes that decision makers can make now to create a more inclusive and flexible environment. One is introducing lateral career opportunities, acknowledging that not everybody wants to move up the ladder. Not everybody wants that stress. Not everybody wants that responsibility, but everybody wants to feel challenged and grow in their work. And so giving them the flexibility to change their job descriptions and add value to the organization in new ways. Two is to introduce remote work arrangements. That aspect of the pandemic that showed the feasibility of remote work life and how that could bring new balance. That's something that they found was adding value to people's impressions of their work culture. Number three is company-sponsored social events. I'm a really big fan of where my wife works. They have done interesting things like buy their staff watercolor kits, mail them to their staff, and they had like a watercolor party over Zoom. But then there's also the classic, like, let's get together for like some ramen and some drinks and just have some laughs. But those help build the community, build bonds, and endear trust. And then four is offering predictable schedules. We are in the nonprofit field where it's easy to feel called to work late, to work weekends because the needs are never ending. But at some extent, we have to be able to pause and guard our time for life, family, friends, and just rest. And of course, this is not on the Culture 500 report, but it should be. You can follow the This is the Moment to Care campaign because you will be able to be in community who are mutually supporting you in your individual and shared work with your team. Before I turn it back to Wendy, I want to, as a nonprofit poet, share one of my favorite poems called On Work by Khalil Gibran. He says, reflecting on work, and what is work with love? What is it to work with love? It is to weave the cloth with threads drawn from your heart, even as if your beloved were to wear that cloth. It is to build a house with affection, even as if your beloved were to dwell in that house. It is to sow seeds with tenderness and reap the harvest with joy, even as if your beloved were to eat the fruit. It is to charge all things you fashion with a breath of your own spirit, and to know that the blessed dead are standing about you and watching. Thank you all for inviting me to share my perspective. I look forward to continuing this intergenerational work with you.
Wow, Naya. Oh my gosh. So part of this was a surprise to me as well, because I didn't see all the slides and you just did your brilliant way of being. So thank you on behalf of all of us. We're giving you a collective standing ovation right now. And I'm going to keep moving along though, because I'm going to make up my time real quick because the next presenter is also going to be as equally phenomenal. So thank you, Naya. Thank you. I'll thank you more and more and more every day. So the slide you have before you very quickly, and we're going to get more into this as the campaign unfolds, but this sort of makes up what we're looking at as we move forward. And we're going to share more after Anna speaks in just a minute. But this, in order to create a massive change in the sector, we're talking about the me, which is the personal care, taking care of myself. This starts with us having boundaries. I'm not going to go into too much because I want to just be quick about it, but how do I take care of myself at work? And what are the things that I do that are damaging to me? And so there's this me point, and Anna's going to mention that a bit. And then there's the we, the interpersonal care. How do I work with you? And everything we all know is so urgent. Everything needs to be done yesterday. And so how do we take care of each other? We're all responsible for holding up that mission, and our health is mutually intertwined. So what do we do together? And then we've got the us inside of our organizations. So the we is our teams. The us is our organizational collective care. We have to review and question the inherent business practices that we've adopted and gotten, as Naya shared, and build new practices that make it easier to accomplish our missions. We have to create organizations that encourage and promote the caring of ourselves and each other. Has to happen. And then finally, the most exciting piece, which is why we're so lucky that we have Heather Iliff at the helm and Henry Bogdan, which is the systemic care. At some point, guys, we're going to need to get together and leverage our power together, our collective power to make change on how nonprofits operate and to foster caring cultures in the workplace. How do we together change the rules, policies, and practices inherited from the powers that be to reflect a system that truly cares about its people? More to come on this. We've got a whole 30th year to discuss, and we're going to. But first, oh my goodness, here we have an enormous treat, just like you just had an enormous treat. We are delighted to have one of the most inspiring, down-to-earth, clear, reasonable, and magical individuals I've ever met. Ana San Juan is a mom, a daughter, a wife, a friend, an explorer, a wisdom seeker, an avid learner, a music lover, and a friend of mine and a colleague for 3 decades. She describes herself as a lifelong researcher of the psychology of human flourishing. So get ready for a treat to talk about burnout with Anna. Thanks, Anna.
Ooh.
Woo!
Hi, thank you so much. Thank you, Wendy and Naya and Heather and everybody on the team. I feel so grateful to have been invited to co-design this campaign with extraordinary people. So what I would love to talk about is actually bring you into a conversation that I was having with Wendy a few weeks ago. And I found myself almost lecturing, like, do you realize what you are creating, what this is really about, and how this is really going to happen? And it's worth sharing and bringing and all of us like being part of the same conversation. So where I'd like to take it is where Wendy just kicked off. on the me, the we, the us, and the advocacy. And I'd love for us to just take a step back and go maybe a little bit, not deeper, but just take a step back and ask, what is at the root of burnout and overwhelm in the marketplace? And I would love to propose a first framework for us to unpack and discover together. And that is the framework and the mindset of scarcity. So scarcity, the scarcity is a set of unconscious, unexamined assumptions that govern our lives without us even knowing it. And it makes us believe that we are unworthy or less than until we acquire more. And we can acquire more of anything. And this is what Naya was also mirroring in his presentation. Scarcity is this nagging internal voice, is what it feels like, that tells us that who we are and what we have and what we do are never enough. So it's almost as if we're like swimming in this water. It's like that analogy that there's fish swimming in a bowl of water and they don't even know that they're in the water. Scarcity runs our economies. Scarcity runs our media, and it really drives our personal decisions. So in the nonprofit sector, bringing it back to us, in the nonprofit sector, scarcity can look like there is not enough. There's not enough time, there's not enough money, there's not enough resources. We don't have what we need to meet the pressing, urgent demands that we feel compelled to serve. Scarcity also is very personal. So each one of us individually can have a sense of, you know what, I'm not really good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not in the powerful group in whatever way I'm defining that. I'm not experienced enough. I'm not accepted enough. So it can be very personal. So what happens when we live in this scarcity mindset? At the core of what happens is that we are being driven by fear. And the fear that we're being driven is the fear of failing, of rejection, of getting caught, fear of not being able to complete our jobs in the way that is expected, fear that our funders or our board or our boss or our colleagues are going to reject us or be disappointed with us. So do you see what's happening? This is in our bellies, and that is what's driving a lot of our frantic overwhelm and burnout behavior. So the thing about fear is that as soon as we drop into a place of fear, we're in the reptilian brain. And we all know this, right? That fear takes away our ability to consciously make decisions and respond thoughtfully. And we often will move into either fight, flight, or freeze, or some combination thereof. In our fighting, we get angry, we blame, we protect ourselves by being chronically discontent. When we're in our flight mode, we run, we rush, we multitask, we run away even. When we're in our freeze mode, we're paralyzed. That's where our anxiety hits. That's where our depression hits. We become ineffective and we can't even give up. So all of this is, I'm bringing up that this is all happening in our workplace. And what happens with fear and any kind of embodied unconscious reaction is that we're operating this way and we're being misunderstood. All of these behaviors are being misunderstood as our personality, when it's not our personality, our leadership style, or our work style. It's actually a coping mechanism that we're being unconscious within. So I have just dropped some, what I'm going to call a hot mess. We've got this culture of scarcity. And then we have this fear that we're operating within. And if that isn't already a tough way to do great work in the world, I'm not sure what is. But now I'm going to propose another big word. And that word is workplace trauma. Now, historically in my reality, I always looked at trauma. I was like, wow, well, trauma is what happens when you go to war, or trauma is what's happened in a car accident or a major transgression against oneself. But I want to propose to us that all of us as veterans of the nonprofit sector, and actually any sector, have come into our workplaces with accumulated workplace trauma. And I'm going to define to you what I mean. So, workplace trauma, and don't you feel it in this slide? You look at this slide and you can just feel the energy and doesn't feel great. But workplace trauma is any experience that we're experiencing in the workplace that psychologically overwhelms us and makes us incapable of responding intellectually or emotionally. So it renders us impotent. We can't deal with it. So what happens? We cut off the experience, we disconnect from it, and we shove it away. We shove it in the back of our proverbial closet. We don't want to look at it anymore, and we don't want to talk about it. So it really becomes disconnected and it becomes disembodied. Trauma is actually, even though we don't want to face it, it is stored in our body. It drives our behavior unconsciously. It disproportionately affects people and communities of color. And it drops us right back into that place of fight, flight, or freeze. Again, unconscious. We're no longer able to really respond because we're overwhelmed. So I think that our workplaces, all of us have accumulated trauma in our workplace. And I'm going to describe to you a few ways a few descriptors of what this looks like and feels like. So toxic workplace cultures, even harassment or bullying, being fired without having a due process around it, a conversation, collaboration around it, being blamed or accused, those kinds of experiences. But workplace trauma can also happen in the less of the direct transgression and more so with excessive workload that's impossible to meet, lack of autonomy, lack of control in the job place, lack of job security, unrealistic expectations, poor interpersonal relationships. And I think that we all know what I'm talking about. In fact, Gallup's research, when I started plugging in and doing research, I was so amazed. Gallup's research says that 85% of people are so unhappy in the workplace that they are officially disengaged. So what are they doing? They're cutting themselves off and they're creating distance as a protective mechanism. Gallup says that 75% of people report having had traumatic experiences in the workplace such that they negatively affect their ability to continue to do their work at their highest capacity now. That is trauma. So I'm going to prove to us that we all know what this experience is, and I'm going to pass the mic to Wendy, and she's going to guide us through a quick exercise.
Awesome. Oh my gosh, Anna, that was wonderful and compelling. So we're going to do a quick thing together, and just hold on. I'm going to explain, and then I'm going to share. In a moment, we're going to access a new platform. So I'm just going to share my screen in a different way. And Amy Coates Madsen is going to put in a link to something called a Mentimeter. And basically, it's a word cloud that we're going to build together. So Amy, if you could throw in the chat the link, and you might want to put it a couple times just in case people don't grab it. but you can click on that link and you're going to write in, all you have to do is like a survey. You're going to type in a few short words, naming some common workplace traumas that you've either experienced or you know someone else has experienced. And I'm going to switch slides while you're doing that to show you what we co-create. If you cannot get into Menti because it's just too confusing or you don't want to, throw your comments in the chat and our team will just populate it for you. So no worries. Just to reiterate, you're going to click on the link. Amy, could you throw it in one more time? You're going to click on this link. It's going to bring you to a new site, and you're just going to type in short phrases of workplace traumas that you know of, and I'm going to share with you what we co-create together. Thanks so much.
It's kind of an unfortunate that we know so much about this.
Yes, it
And
is.
we actually don't commonly talk about it.
It feels a little bit like shame because, and it reminds me a lot of when you were saying this, imposter syndrome. Why is that even a concept? I think that when I started being a consultant, which was in 1994, it probably wasn't until 10 years later that I didn't feel like a failure. So, or like an imposter. So I don't see anybody populating the word cloud just yet. So we'll give it one more second. Maybe it won't work.
Well, I'll drop into the chat and start to share what we're seeing.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Trauma, disregard, being dismissive, misogyny, being excluded, not having a supportive manager, backlash, being overworked, favoritism, sexual harassment,
Oof.
bullying. I mean, can't we all raise our hands and say that this is how we've been hurt? I love what Naya said, the toxic five, being disrespected, experiencing or seeing what is unethical, cutthroat and being undermined, abusive bosses and colleagues. So if the mentee may not be demonstrating to us, but I think if we all took and nodded our heads for a moment, we'd say, yes, we all agree that workplace trauma is a very real thing. So I'm going to move into the question. So what does scarcity, workplace trauma, and fear have to do with cultures that care? What is all this about? And here's the clincher. Here's the thing that I was saying to Wendy. Wendy, we must understand that this is what we're up to. That changing organizational cultures must start with changing ourselves. And changing ourselves starts with all of us unlearning, unwinding the embedded reactions, the embedded fear, the embedded trauma, and the mindset of scarcity that we have all accumulated in the course of our professional lives to date. If I'm going to create a culture that cares, I actually have to know what it feels like to feel safe, to set boundaries, to eat my meal, to actually say, you know what, I'm good enough and my team is good enough and we have enough to do this work. Only when I start to really live into this and I start to embody it, can I model it? Can I hold and instill and create the policies and practices and the rituals with my teammate and with my organization to actually live this out? So when we talk about creating a culture that cares, we're actually talking about it not being a simple intellectual decision, This is not about just layering on another layer of policies or practices to what we already do. It's really about personal healing. It's unlearning, unwinding. It is personal healing, and this is a personal practice. In the moment of, in the heat of the moment, when the pressure is on, when your boss or your colleague or whatever that stress, the funder, the deadline comes into your space, you will revert back to your unconscious coping mechanisms, your fear, flight, or fight. That's just how the human body works. In the face of this pressure, we always revert back to our habits. So what does this mean? That creating cultures that care is going to rely on us shifting, practicing every day, every moment of every day, when we feel those triggers and we feel ourselves dropping into our fear or our scarcity, that we stop, we pause, and we pivot. That is incredible personal awareness, personal discipline that is going to be required. And that's where this culture of cares campaigns begins. It begins with us. Now, the good news is that what is the opposite of scarcity? Let's look at the opposite of scarcity is a term that is called sustainable abundance. Sustainable meaning it keeps us going in the directions that we need to go in. And abundance means that we have an awareness and an appreciation of what already we have in front of us and who already we are. So what this would look like is, I have enough to do this work. I am ready. I am good enough, strong enough, capable enough to serve. I am surrounded by enough talent and resources to do the great work of the world. I am safe. I am supported. I trust. I matter. I belong. Love is the answer and not fear. Now, this feels great. And this is where I'd like to close. The reason I bring all of this up is because I want to compassionately point out that this is hard work. It is simple. It is not easy. And when we start to step in and start to really work towards this culture that care over the course of the next year, this is the challenge will come up, and we all have to love ourselves and support ourselves in the personal healing that's going to lead to the collective healing. This, in my view, is no less than a revolution. It's an inner revolution that leads to an outer revolution. And I just wanted to share, my perspective on that. And we have lots of help and support. And within that, I'm going to close it and pass it back to Wendy, and she's going to guide us through how we're going to do this.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Brilliant. We're going to give you a standing ovation as well. Oh my gosh. The two of you I feel so honored. Thank you. And Anna and I have been talking since this gift was given to us by Heather Iliff to do this work. How do we do this together? And there's a couple principles that are really critical. The first one is that we're all in this together. So yeah, sure, I might have this great gift of leading this initiative, but this isn't built on what I believe to be true. It's some of the piece, but it's what we all believe to be true. This is us doing collective thriving and saying, no more. We're going to change. And it's not going to be a switch and tomorrow it's all going to be better. Just as Anna shared, in times of stress, we go back to our patterns. And so we're going to commit to working on it. So how do we do this, right? Well, it starts here and now. And this little graphic that I made, which I got a lot of kudos from the marketing team, so yay for me. But so we're on a journey. This is called the collective thriving journey. We are doing this Thank God for our board and our CEO who said, go ahead, go forth, let's make this change. And Maryland Nonprofits is leading the way. We're committed and we're in it in honor of you, your missions, and our service to you for our 30th anniversary, 30 years. And I just want to say, Amy Coates-Madsen, have you been at Maryland Nonprofits for 30 years? Drop how long you've actually been at the organization in the chat, please. Amy is our director of the Standards for Excellence Institute and deserves a gigantic shout out, but we'll keep on in the name of time, and that'll be another session. Anyway, so we're walking off over this bridge, and we realize from a variety of theories that help us to understand behavior change that people will join at a variety of places. The theory of the diffusion of innovation theory by E.M. Rogers in 1962, he basically said that people will adopt a behavior change or a change at certain degrees. And so we're hopeful that we're speaking to the innovators and the early adopters, the people at the beginning of this who say, I'm in. I don't know what it looks like, but I believe it. I have love in my heart. I have grace in my spirit, and I'm willing to do this work with you. So we want to go from this, like, here we are in the nonprofit sector, and I'm going to just use the laser pointer. Here we are with like, the money's on fire, our brains are on fire, our hearts are on fire. We just can't keep up, right? The world is on fire. And we're asking you to walk over the bridge with us. We're not going to drag you. Absolutely not. We're not going to require it, but we're going to welcome it. And we're going to invite you to co-create with us because we believe that this is a collective genius happening. It's not just ours, which is so cool. So we are going to end burnout once and for all. Here's our new badge, Lydia and Susanna. You created this beautiful new badge, which says our culture. And this is ours about Maryland Nonprofits, but you're also going to be able to download this. You'll be able to have this as well, which says our culture, your culture cares about our people. And we are declaring it, and we are going to make that happen. And it takes years, because we're on our own journey at Maryland Nonprofits. And we've gone from a time when things weren't great to a time when they were fabulous, and then they weren't so great again. And then we sort of committed to this new way of being, which is how we've been in this learning laboratory for years around creating a true organizational model based on caring. And sometimes we get tripped up because our work is as urgent as yours. So our team, I've shared with them, and thank you for your grace, team. We are going to continue to be in the learning laboratory to help figure things out as we deliver them to you. This is a collective action, the only way we can do it together. And if Lydia, if you would drop into the chat our new landing page for this initiative, you will see that we have some things. You'll be able to download your own badge there. And you will see the path that we're on. We're working to unfold this as it goes. And we know that we're going to try to build a core of caring people at all levels inside of the sector who want to become workplace care innovators. We believe that no one person is the expert. We all can contribute to this in a variety of ways. And to join this caring core, listen, you don't need to do anything other than throw your name and your email in if you're interested. And Amy, if you could throw that Google form in, that first one, and I'd be happy to do it as well. And just so you know, we're going to also send a to-go package out with the slides and maybe some other goodies. And in that will be the other links that you can join on as well. But to join this caring core, all you need to do is just shoot us your name. You can do it by email. Somebody can throw my email in the chat as well, team, if you'd like. Zero pressure to join us, but we want to help you, help yourself, help your teams, and be even better for our communities. So we're in this together, me, you, we, us, all of us. So Anna, I'm going to throw it back to you to just announce what's next coming up for the next speaker, the next set of speakers next time.
Well, I wanted to really share that the concepts of scarcity and sustainable abundance are led nationally by this amazing pair of friends and colleagues, Gina LaRoche and Jen Cohen. They've written a book, The 7 Laws of Enough. They are deep practitioners of the concepts of sustainable abundance, and they bring this work to organizations all over the world, really, particularly in corporate cultures. And they're making changes there. They also work with the nonprofit sector. So they will be speaking with us and sharing with us all of their brilliance and sharing their book and all of their practices with us shortly.
Great. Thank you so much. This is going to be an incredible treat. They also do healing collective trauma. They have so many layers to them, and we're just so delighted that Anna has a relationship with them, and they are willing to come and do another public event for us to help us all grow. So as over the year, over our 30th anniversary year, there's going to be a lot coming out from us that will support you in creating a workplace culture that cares. The first thing that's up right next is we're going to hold an executive session for leaders who want to work on building a culture of caring. Excuse me. And it's going to be available. You can just sign on. We're going to have a chat about it and just talk a little bit further at the executive level around how do you declare this while continuing to do the urgent work and service the community. So that'll be there. And then the next one is for all of us who are not in leadership positions, who want to be part of the caring core, but really who want to start working on the change in their workplace, even if they don't have the declaration from the executive. Because the truth is about this work, Heather didn't say to me, do this work 9 years ago or 8 years ago or 7 years ago, but I took it on myself because it's what I believe in. I know I'm not the only one who believes in this. If I could see everybody in the camera, I can't see you right now, but if I could see everyone, I could probably call out a few names of people in this room who embody this work because I know you and I've worked with you for 9 years. So we're going to be providing do-it-yourself tools all year long. And we're also going to do something else, which I'm going to share just in 2 slides. Also, Darius Johnson, our director of membership, gave us a discount code for you as for our 30th anniversary special. We know that there are a lot of folks in this room that are not members of Maryland Nonprofits and might want to participate with us. We've got so much planned this year to support you in your missions, besides all the other things from our Stands for Excellence Institute. So join us, become a member, don't become a member, whatever you want, we're here for you. And then, this is going to be so much fun. We are going to have a phenomenal celebration of our 30th anniversary, which is today, but we're going to do it on July 28th. We're having a huge evening event in Baltimore, and the theme is to honor our teams and our staff. We hope that everybody will show up and just come join. It's going to be a blast. And of course, our team is pretty good at throwing parties, so you might want to just come for the sake of it. And then finally, our beautiful consulting group that many of you know. And if you haven't ever worked with us, this is our team. You've got Carmen. I'm sorry that there's a little thing on Carmen's picture. That doesn't make me happy. And then so you've got Carmen Marshall up here, who's the director of consulting and our chief equity officer, and Patty Morton, our general counsel, and Patty Prasada Rao, our senior consultant, and me, Wee, as my granddaughter calls me, and Justine Ramos, who is our program manager. And so Carmen and our team, we are offering a consulting engagement for organizations that are in need of a facilitated dialogue and a facilitated change process. Much of what we're doing is DIY, but we also know, and those of you who are in here today who work with me on this already, know that we do offer organizational transformation processes. And we're creating a whole new body of work to walk you through it. I had a slide, but I cut it out because I was worried about the time. And so I just want you to know that the 5 of us on the screen and the 30 of you, I know Ana Astrid Molina, you're in this room because I saw you in the chat. You're on this new Cultures That Care team. And we've got a whole bunch of consultants that rolled up their sleeves and said, I'm in, I want to work on this, sign me up. So in honor of the 30th anniversary, and Amy, if you don't mind throwing that Google form in the chat, the one that goes with slide 35, I believe, I don't know. I'm sorry. I was so organized. I don't know. We'll see. But anyway, we'll figure it out. You can drop your name in the chat too, if you're interested in this offering that I'm about to share. So we're going to give today only, we may do it again, but for certain today only, we're going to give our members an additional 30% discount, and our non-members, if you want to join us, 30% discount, even if you don't become a member, in signing up for our new consulting engagement. Well, it's not new. It's going to be revitalized because we're doing the work right now. If you need a consultant, here's the rub. You do not have to say or sign a contract or say, I'm doing it. You just have to indicate interest. If you indicate interest by the end of the day, you can do that by the Google form, by the chat, or directly email me or Justine. Hey, Justine, will you put both of our emails in there? You can email Justine, you can email me, and we will keep your name in a list and follow up with you. And should you decide between now and the end of this year, December 31st, 2022, that you want to participate, you will get that discount. Today, you have to say and declare you're in it. You don't have to use it if you don't want it, but you have to say yes today, and maybe we'll do it again. I don't know. We'll see. So finally, as we wind up this absolutely glorious moment in time, we're so happy. We're going to try another word cloud at the end. And if we don't, we're going to ask you to stay around and throw your comments in the chat. But before we do that, we have lovely, lovely Imani Dai, who is our marketing coordinator. And she is a daughter and a sister and a student of life, a revolutionary and a lover. And Imani, and I asked her, because she loves this engagement and has raised her hand at every moment in time, said, I'm in, what can I do? Sign me up. So Imani is our poet for the day, our reader for the day, and she selected this poem. And so Imani, could we spotlight Imani? And if would you be so kind as to read that to us?
Yes, no problem at all. Thank you so much for giving me
Hi.
the Hi. I'm really excited to be a part of this movement because, like in my introductory, I am a revolutionary, and this movement is so revolutionary to the workplace and just the world. So I'm really happy to be a part of it. So without further ado, this is But When by E.A. Brennenstuhl. We are going to do a kindly deed, sometimes perhaps, but when? Our sympathy given a time of need, sometimes perhaps, but when? We will do so much in the coming years. We will banish the heartaches and doubts and fears, and will comfort the lonely and dry their tears, sometimes perhaps, but when? We will give a smile to a saddened heart, sometimes perhaps, but when? Of the heavy burdens we'll share a part, sometimes perhaps, but when? Sometime we're going to right the wrong, sometimes the weak we will make strong. Sometimes we'll come with love's old sweet song, sometimes, but when? Thank you.
I know. Quick question. Heather Iliff, are you crying? I hope so, because you do cry. Are you crying?
I'm okay now, but that was beautiful, Imani. Thank you.
Yes, Imani, that is so beautiful. And this poem, I believe I looked up, I mean, it's like in the early 1900s. That was, I don't remember the exact year, maybe. Anyway, but when? When? Well, now we're doing
This is the moment. This is the
moment, girl. This is the moment to care. And we are going to do that. And we hope you'll join us. So we're going to throw another form in the chat. And as we leave today, we're just about done. Actually, we came under time, probably because the word cloud didn't work. Hey, you got to keep rolling. You can't let it bother you, Wendy. So what we're going to do is we're going to ask you two things. If I can get the word cloud to work, I'll make it happen. If not, if you could throw in the chat, what are you leaving with today? You know, one or two words. Are you leaving? And if one of my teammates would just write this, you know, the question, which is, what are you leaving with today? What inspired you? Or what are you taking away? And then if you can throw it in the chat and then put that in there. And here's one of the greatest treats ever. This beautiful lady who sings so well and is our senior consultant has offered yet again to sing another beautiful song as we leave. So I'm going to stop sharing for a moment and see if I can get that word cloud working. And if I can't, we're just going to say, actually, before you start singing, I'm going to throw it to Heather. And Heather, why don't you just say final words, and we'll leave it to Patty, and that'll just be wonderful.
Thank you so much. What an inspirational morning. I certainly felt some feelings and am ready to continue to be on this journey of change with all of you. And as you said, we'll do it with heart, we'll do it together. And it wouldn't be a 30th anniversary campaign if we didn't also have ways for you to get involved and support the work. And so if you would like to make a pledge to the campaign today, please share that in the chat. And it may be a pledge to join the team, a pledge to make a contribution. That was that caring team that Amy talked about, a pledge to help us get a new member or join today, a pledge to take part in consulting, or a pledge to make a caring culture a reality in your organization. Let's share some love in the chat while you are going to be blown away with Patty Prasada Rao's beautiful vocalist voice. Thank you.
Thank you. Be encouraged, dear ones. Sometimes in our lives, we all have pain. We all have sorrow, but if we are wise, we know that there's always tomorrow. Lean on me when you're not strong, and I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on, for it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. Please swallow your pride if I have things you need to borrow, for no one can fill those of your needs that you won't let show. You just call on me, brother, when you need a hand. We all need somebody to lean on. I just might have a problem that you'll understand. We all need somebody to lean on. If there is a load you have to bear that you can't carry, I'm right up the road. I'll share your load if you just call me. Just call me. You just call on me, sister, when you need a hand. We all need somebody to lean on. I just might have a problem that you'll understand. We all need somebody to lean on. Lean on me. Sing if you want. When you're not strong, and I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on, for it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. You just call me. If you need a friend, call me. I'll be your friend, call me.
Oh, let's just unmute and clap, please. Oh my gosh. Patty, thank you for that absolutely most uplifting. We are so grateful to you for always bringing your heart. Thank you, Imani. Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Naya. Thank you, Heather. Thank you, our board of directors. Thanks, Amy, for helping me so deeply. Thanks, Connor. Thanks to you for coming. We adore you, and we can't wait to be in touch. Let's walk over the bridge. Let's skip.
We are walking over that bridge. Maryland Nonprofits team, staff and board members, I'm going to send you a link for a little celebration after a quick bio break. And then guess what? Let's take the afternoon off.
Woo!
It's beautiful out. Let's take this moment to celebrate. Way to go.
Afternoon off. Yes.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.
Heather.
Have a great day.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
everyone.